Hey, Joven here, and today I want to share a bit more about Postgres LLM. It's a new way of being able to call any AI LLM model directly from your database to update specific rows or column on when new data is inserted or updated. And the reason we built this is because as more and more users were building projects on top of interface, we realized a very common use case was a one-shot task where you have an initial insert in your database. That insert then triggers an API outside of your database into a server that will take that information, post-process it in certain ways through an LLM, and then eventually update that row or insert a new row somewhere else in the database. And that loop seems to be very common where the data is just being used for a later purpose. A very common example is translation. You have user reviews that come in different languages and you want to translate them all to English or to different languages based on what your app is building. And that's a common use case where you need to leave your database to interact with some model to get that changes for you. And another good example would be OCR. You have a bunch of documents in your database. You want to extract that information and store that in text in your database. And Interface does this really well because of its deterministic nature. It works really well with your database to do these things without having any LLM bloat or inaccurate information being stored in your database. But the thing is, you can also integrate this with any LLM of your choice and put this into directly in Postgres LLM. So let me show you how to get started. We're going to be using Supabase for this example, and you don't need to write a single line of code outside of your Supabase dashboard. You can just copy and paste most of the things here, and you can already get started, and it should just work out of the box for your database. The first thing you want to do is get the init SQL file, right? So you just want to copy over this file, and it's all the code you need that will basically extend Postgres to have this ability. Let's go to Supabase, let's go to the SQL editor and just paste this command. Since we're using interface for this example here, and it's the best use case for interface because of its deterministic outputs, you can trust the output that you're going to get is going to be accurate as what you want. What you want to do is replace the API key over here. So let me just go to get the interface API key, copy that, and you've pasted your API key over here. And now you can execute this. You can run it and enable RLS, and you're good to go. Cool. Now we have the relevant functions needed to execute this on any table and any row. So let's do a pretty simple example. The example I gave at the start, user reviews. So here we have a bunch of user reviews. And now on every new user reviews, we want to automatically generate the sentiment and translate them to English. So let's set this up. The first thing we want to do over here is write a trigger function. A trigger function is a simple way of saying, hey, when something gets inserted or updated to that specific table, call something else or call the function. And so this is what we're going to do. So on every insert to that specific table, and it's specifically to the review text column, we want to call this function called llm.call. We can write our prompt as per normal, how we would write a prompt for any model. So analyze the sentiment of the text, give it in one of these three categories, positive, negative, neutral, written it in all lowercase, and also translate that to English. As you can see here, we're doing multiple things with a single prompt, and that's fine, right? And the good part about that is that it can refer to a specific column just by quoting it in these brackets. And then what you need to do is specify the columns that you want to update the values. And so in this situation, we have two specific columns. We want to update the sentiment column and the translation column. So let's go back to the editor. So we just state sentiment and translation. Now we just run this task. We run this query and we're good to go. So now this table will interact with the trigger every time a new content is updated or inserted. So let's try something. I have this piece of content over here. Let's say this is a new user review. It's inserted in Hindi. We save it. So one thing that's interesting that it's not blocking the database. So what happens is the insert still goes through and everything happens asynchronously. So it will call the model and automatically update this information in the background. Let me just refresh it. Yeah, perfect. Cool. So we got the sentiments updated and you can see that it got translated to English from Hindi over here, right in your database without having to leave it. And you can do this again for any use case, for anything that you typically want to keep within your database. Let's do something a bit more complex. So Now we have a use case where we have new users that sign up for our platform. We get their full name, we get their company name, but we also want to enrich the other information that we can get about them from the internet so that we can do some marketing. And can we now use interface to get that information? Similarly, the same way we set up translation, we can apply that on now getting information from the internet. So simply the same thing. You copy the same piece of trigger that you have over here and paste it, but now you just change the table that you're pointing to and the columns that you're referencing from. So in here, as you can see, it's a new prompt, get me the summary of the person's background, get me their LinkedIn URL. Here we're referring to two columns now. We want to refer to their full name and the company based on the columns that we have defined in our table. Now we want to update two different columns, the summary of who they are and their LinkedIn profile. So we can use this information later to do some level of marketing. So let's insert this over here. Awesome. Let's go back to the table. And now on insert, it should automatically do that fine for us. So let's try getting this person's information, and he works at Superbase. And let's save that. And now we give this a bit and it will come back with the relevant information. And again, this happens asynchronously, so it does not block the database at all. And the database queries and performance still stays the same without any limitations. Okay, cool. The information is back. So you can see it automatically pulled out the summary and Willison, and it also pulled out his LinkedIn right in the database without, again, leaving the database. And all this has happened automatically. Let's try another example. And this is a bit more interesting because it also can interact with other modalities that isn't just text. So for example, if you have an image URL in your database that is signed, now the LLM, the model, can interact with that image and do any information that you want and store that right in your database. So one good example is OCR, where you have receipts or you have invoices or documents or whatever sorts, and you want to pull out specific variables and store that alongside the image so you can use that information in other parts of your pipeline. So let's say we're building an expense management software. We want to store receipts, we want to get the price, and you want to get the taxes automatically, again, right in the database. So I have this image over here. Let's open up. And this image is stored in my Superbase storage bucket. And again, you can keep everything in the same ecosystem so it doesn't have to leave that instance. And now we want to pull out the taxes and the total amount. So all we have to do similarly is first create a trigger function. Again, you do this once and you never have to do that again because you just have to create this trigger once and every insert, it just happens. We want to refer to the image URL and we want to update the total price and the taxes and we're good to go. Same thing, we just have to run this trigger. And now we have this trigger running for this table. And let's insert a new row. We're going to insert the image URL over here and we're good to go. And now we give it a bit and the values should pop up. Let me give it a refresh. Awesome. Cool. The values did pop up. And that's basically how it works. And you can do this for unlimited use cases, classifying documents, classifying audio, doing speech to text directly in the database so that transcript gets stored there. There's hundreds different use cases that if you want to build right in your database and everything's just managed from your database, and that's Postgres LLM. It works directly out of the box with any chat completion APIs, meaning you can integrate any model that you like. And it works amazingly with interface because of its deterministic nature that we designed from the ground up based on our new architecture. So give it a try and try all the different use cases that you like.